here we are. Here we are. Welcome everyone. Today is a Hylo product review session with our friends at OpenTEAM, and we are talking about the proposals feature, pew, 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 which we've been working on in collaboration with this community. And we previously reviewed the designs together and talked about the functionality and explored how we might want to use it. And we've taken all that to heart and built it. And so today you're going to see it in the staging environment. We're still putting like tiny finishing touches on it, but it's really ready to go. So this is one of the last stops before it gets pushed live on the internet on production. So we're super stoked to share with you where we've gotten to. Biggest celebrations to Aaron for designing a beautiful feature, and to Tom for writing the majority of the code. And I'm sure Tibet also had a huge hand in that. But Tom has really poured a lot of energy into this, and it's awesome. It's so exciting that we're adding this feature to Hylo. And yeah, we're stoked to share it with you. We have a Miro, naturally. There's the link. And we could, if you can zoom out and find the section down.
Let me switch with you.
Okay. Section down, I think here, getting situated. Boop, boop. Tom, I can walk folks through the screenshots and explain the feature, or we could just give it to you to just demo and show it live. But you are on mute.
You're muted
Mute,
still.
just,
I'm
yes.
muted.
Okay.
Yes. Let's go for the live demo.
Okay.
Sharing permission.
Okay. Let me,
Or am I not, have I been co-hosted?
Edit it down here. The chevron.
Oh, whoops. Okay. I am in the process of giving you the permissions. All. Okay, cool. Thank you for the tech support. Okay, Tom, you should be able to.
Okay, sweet. I think I'll just do this, and then I will, oh, we're gonna go all the way over here. Okay.
Yay.
Get comfy here. All right, so everyone should be able to see now the staging environment of Hylo.
Yeah.
And so through the last few weeks, we've just been collectively adding proposals and just kind of like messing around with different pieces of the functionality. And I think, well, the screens that you showed in the Miro, Claire, started with creation. So should we just dive straight into creation?
Yeah.
Okay. So like all the other posts, you hit create, or there are a few ways to get this little dialog to pop open. And proposals are just another one of the options for a post. So let's dive into that. So the interface is similar to most other post interfaces, but there are several more options with proposals. So one of the key things is that proposals require an option. You need to be able to select them, select something. I think hypothetically you can actually just have one proposal. That could make sense in some contexts, because you could set a quorum that says like, oh, I want 90% of the 80% of the people in this group, or potentially groups if I add other groups. So now the quorum would be very different to vote. And if you just have one option, then you could run a perfectly acceptable proposal in that way. However, most of the time, you probably want to have multiple options. And so you can either compose them completely yourself, or we also have a list of kind of like preset templates, shall we say, that you can base your proposal on. I won't go through all of these, but essentially each of them has a range of different proposals or options, I should say, that kind of will give you a good start for you to be able to customize and tweak. So one
Show us
of
a
the
couple.
sorry, yeah, I'll
Show us a
show you a
couple.
few. Okay, the very basic one, yes, no. So that can be a very simple one. You could say, of course, you have to add a title. Maybe it's like, should we order pizza? I mean, of course, yes, but let's hypothetically, you want to get a feel for what people think. So yes, no is a very basic, simple one. It defaults to a single vote per person. However, if you wanted to access those templates again, you need to remove the existing options, and then you can go back to sort of resetting a template, resetting the template and picking another option. So let's say, let me think. Well, let's just use the multiple choice option. So perhaps we want to order pizza. We pretty much know that already, but there's 3 different pizza stores or 5 different pizza stores. So we could just go through and then change them and be like, Mary's Pizza, and go through and change all of these to the specific options that we would like. And here you see when we selected that multiple choice option, it picked the voting method of multiple votes allowed. So we'll show some examples of that later on, but essentially it's like there are times when you want people to be able to select multiple options, scheduling, or when there's different possibilities that people might want to choose. Again, the quorum amount can be varied, and there is a little explainer text for what quorum actually means, since it is a bit of a fancy word that maybe not everyone has encountered. And another thing that we can do is make the votes anonymous, which again, we can show examples of. I won't create every permutation because there's certainly many permutations that can be done with the current settings. And certainly in terms of the glorious future of proposals, there are even more ways that we could imagine customization in so many different ways. We certainly don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves in that regard. So this is the initial kind of set of things. Maybe the last thing, well, I will create this proposal, do something a little bit else. Let's just use gradient of agreement for fun. So you can see that you can have many options in play. The last thing I will add is that you can also create a voting window. So you could say, I want the voting to start tomorrow and I want it to end on Tuesday. And so when that, oh, I should, yeah, okay, we've got a, I was like, did I put a title in? Yes, we've got a title. So when that, those voting periods shift, right now discussion is in progress, so I can't actually vote. I'm trying to click here. So there's no voting before the proposal starts. That will flip over to voting open when this time elapses. And then similarly, when this time ends, voting will be closed. And those different states should be represented here. And those are updated by the backend and not by the user. But we'll show some ways that users can sort of end the voting as well. So just to run through this quickly, you can see the quorum here is represented, 25% quorum in this instance. All the groups that were involved, the total membership of those groups is 144 people. So there is, you got to get 25 of 124, 144. Oh, sorry, correction. This is, that's not exactly right. This number
I think the
is
144 is the 25%.
Yes, that's the 25%.
Yeah.
So correction. Yep. So that's the limit that we need to get to. And you can see someone's already commenting. So Tibet really, I think he wants me to add more description here. So I can go in and edit that. Fine, that's fine. I can be like the history of pizza. Blah 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 blah, and I can edit. That's fine. But if let's see if I want to like remove an agreement. Just there's a warning here that if you want to change agreements after, or sorry, options after a proposal has been set, that this will actually reset any votes. In this instance, no votes have happened, whatever. But we've favored that situation in this sort of configuration because it can get very messy if we allow people to edit, the options, whether it's the text or just their existence, and then some people's votes would disappear, or it becomes very messy. And we got some great feedback from other folk when we asked on the platform what people think we should do about this. And one of the great things that was shared was someone said, we've used an online platform for voting in the past. And whenever we got to a point where we realized that we needed to change the proposals, it actually was a big note for us to just go back to the drawing board altogether about that proposal, or that voting decision. So that's the current sort of way that we're handling that situation. So I'm not going to make that edit, and instead I'm going to just bop through and look at a couple of different things that we've poked at. So anonymous voting here, if I click, I'm voting on this, but you can't see my votes. And there's a little icon there that just reminds people that it's an anonymous vote. Also, just here we have a time frame. So I just want to make a distinction here between proposals that have a time frame and those that do not. So in this instance, there is no time frame. I'm not the author of this post, so I can't. I'll show you an example of when I'm the author. So voting is open, just select one option. But actually, whenever Tibet wants, he can come through and kind of like close the voting. So let me see if there's a one that I've done recently that is open. Claire, Tom. Okay, so this is probably an option. Okay, here we go. This is an example. So I've asked the deep and meaningful question, yay or no, and it has received many votes. And as this is an open proposal in terms of time frame, we call it like a casual proposal. And so I'm like, cool. I think we've got a good sense of what people want. They want the yay, they don't want the no. So I can go here and yes, I'm ready to summarize. And then I can sort of close the vote. So immediately the colors change. Quorum has been reached with 4 votes. Life is sweet and beautiful. And I can say, looks like the yays have it, and that now shows up here. If I close this, we now have this displayed wherever this vote is displayed.
Yeah.
So that's
nice.
the sort of casual vote, and there'll be for votes that have a time frame when they end, there will also be an option for the author to do a similar exercise. I'm wondering if there are any other multiple votes. I don't think there's multiple votes down here yet. I'm constrained. Okay, maybe in another group, but that's probably the long and the short of it, with perhaps a caveat that mobile allows you to vote, but we're not implementing the options for you to change proposals on mobile, because we feel like this is a bit more of a power user functionality. Of course, that may well change in the future when we get into our broader kind of like reconfiguration of mobile that's coming this year. So I think I will pause there and ask if anyone has any specific questions or otherwise, I'm more than happy to hand it back to the rest of the team.
Yay, Tom.
Oh, here's a multiple choice. There we go.
Amazing.
So for example. All right. I think it's I'll stop sharing.
Well, okay, we might want to go back just in case, but let's do a round. Would love to hear reactions from folks, or any questions bubbling up. Yeah, who would like to go first? I will call on someone. Go ahead, Anna.
Hey y'all, I'm in a public space today, so sorry if there's some background noise. Yeah, I don't know if I have any like super constructive criticism other than to say like I'm really excited about this, and I feel like I can already think of like a bunch of times that OpenTEAM could have used this in the past and can use it going forward. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, the question around like what if you want to change proposal seems tricky, and I do think it feels like if a proposal needs to change, it kind of makes sense to go back to the drawing board and think again. I think like with the quorum option, I'm thinking about like our working groups and stuff and how a challenge might be getting people to engage, especially if there's like people that are on the group that maybe like joined years ago and now aren't active, and how that would impact that. But yeah, super exciting, and thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Right. There should be some way to know the activity level of the group in order to set the appropriate level of quorum, because 100% of the people who've been active in the last 3 months is different than 100% of the people in your group.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like maybe like active members, or if they're, I don't know, that feels
Yeah.
tricky, but I was just thinking about that because I think it would be really cool to have the quorum option, but yeah, it might be tricky in some contexts.
That's a very good insight. Thank you.
Mhm. Tibet, did you have your hand up?
Well, I have a specific question, which I guess maybe I'll pose now so people can answer in their round.
Sure.
And Tom, did you show the emojis, or did I miss that?
Oh, I didn't select the emojis. Not really. No. So yeah, the presets come with their own emoji, but again, like you can pick from a selection of emojis to sort of, you know, give that extra differentiation between the different options.
Well, my specific, very important question.
Oh,
is,
yes, right.
I think that you should be able to choose any emoji, and Tom disagrees and has a limited set of emojis that we currently have. And so I want to know people's opinions on that. And we could actually show the limited set.
Yeah, maybe.
It's a deeply existential question.
Yes, the emoji question, always. Should I share again? I'll just quickly.
Sure.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so por ejemplo, there's a pretty limited set, and I thought I removed that. There's an extra 100 in there that is skewing things a bit, but essentially we have a and maybe just a contrast. There's a common design challenge of like, do we, I guess, suggest a more constrained set of things that are more relevant, or do we just allow, oh, you can like put anything in there, like this is the emoji picker that we have, and for posts in general, and of course there's a bajillion options, so many options that it's overwhelming. So I'm kind of leaning more towards just like having a tighter set that is more relevant, that we could maybe tweak, versus Tibet, wanting the complete sort of freedom option. So at some point there is also like probably a medium space where I think there is a way to, with at least the web-based emoji picker, to have this initial frequently used set as something that we configure, but I did not want to tangent into that while I was working on proposals. But that is also something that is, I think, available in the future, is that we get the sort of best of both worlds by having a preset collection, still the accessibility of everything. So we'd love to hear reactions from everyone else about how exciting or unexciting it is to have either option.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so let's continue the round and people can give reactions to anything overall, like your takeaways, your thoughts on this, questions that are bubbling up. And then if you want to comment on emojis specifically, you're welcome to do that as well. Let's hear from Nat.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, this is awesome. Just great job, Hylo team. I like the idea, Tom, of what you were just describing, which is sort of pre-configuring the emojis that might be most relevant, but I also like the idea of being able to search a broader set. I guess one thing I'm thinking about here is I think that in the example that you shared of strong agree to strong disagree, like I think it's very useful to have those types of emojis pinned as like maybe regular emojis that folks could use and are pretty intuitive, but then also it can get very customized for what you're proposing and pulling. I think in broad response, beyond just the emoji question here, I think sort of in line with Anna's note on sort of how actively engaged is each community and how does that shift sort of ability to reach quorum. One question I have is if you were to post in multiple groups, how does that change the ability to reach quorum? And like if you're combining groups that have really different levels of activity, does that create complication? Also, if you have people who are in multiple groups, are they sort of double counted in the population size at that point, but only able to vote once? I'm like, or are they able to vote twice, once through each group? And then obviously that would be a problem too. I'm assuming it might be that you can only vote once, but that the population size might be double counted. I don't know.
That's very good.
My other note is just that I really love all the options that you have for different proposal templates. And I wonder if folks who are not heavy Hylo users would not realize the flexibility of that question type by only having the ability to choose proposal when you select the question type. So like, how can you better indicate, oh, I'm choosing proposal instead of text-based post or asking a question or making an offering. And with that, I have all of these options that I will then be able to choose from within a template. Because I think as people learn about this new feature, if they don't know that you have all of these pre-made templates, it might be an underutilized feature, even though it has a lot of power behind it. So I'm just thinking about how you can communicate out like early on as someone creates a post that this could be like the right post type for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are my big notes, and it seems like Tom, maybe you have some responses to some of that.
Yeah, do we want to do responses or do we want to keep going in the round?
Yeah, I think if you have some responses to that, that would be great, especially on the multi-group questions. You can probably like clear up some of that for us.
Yes. So certainly only one vote because it's tied to post.
Right.
Certainly double counting is absolutely happening because we're just checking the numbers of membership. We're not checking distinct membership.
Mhm.
But also in broadly speaking, we also sat with this question of like, does quorum even make sense, or even proposals make sense for multiple group things? That's just like inherent part of our current model with posts, is that naturally, that's one of the things we love. We like being able to just boop multiple groups. But I actually think logically, it won't make a lot of sense. There'll be a lot of times where maybe it's like you're just trying to get a read for what people want to do. But I don't think like sort of hard governance things that are often associated with quorum will really make sense over multi-group scales anyway. So this is maybe like one of those things where we're enabling this feature, but like it's probably only rare that you use that combination of all the features, and for it to make sense. So yeah, quorum and multiple group posting, I think is rare for that it would make sense. So like we even had a bit of discussion like, should we just kind of like not allow that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, and
yeah.
I wonder with that how difficult it would be to either restrict it to one group or to at least put like, hey, I like a tooltip. Like we see that
It's
you have
just kind of
multiple
weird.
groups and a quorum, and we wouldn't advise that. And here's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, or it's just not an option. But we went back and forth a lot on whether multi-group proposals should even be allowed. And I think from my perspective, we landed on wanting to allow it as an experiment because of the importance from like an evolutionary group perspective and like the pro-social thing of like, yeah, like if multiple groups could be making decisions together, that is really advanced coordination. And we're in the business of trying to create pathways for advanced coordination. So it would be very interesting to see groups trying to do that across multiple groups. And so I think that's why we're in general allowing it, even though there's so many edge cases that could come up there.
I'll also add that I think maybe in the long run, we're doing this redesign in the coming months, and we'll want to simplify the post creation process. And probably quorum is kind of an advanced feature that you wouldn't even necessarily offer to as you're creating a proposal unless someone needs that or wants that. And yeah, another thing to consider is just like, is this something we want to be promoting as a sort of default option for all proposals, or is it like for those who really know what they're doing and want to do something a little bit more sophisticated?
Right. Any other thoughts on that, or shall we continue with our round? Yes, let's continue. Chris, I would love to hear from you.
Thanks. No questions this time. Just I don't want to take up too much time. Just congratulations. I really like the feature. I think you did an awesome job in the design hierarchy of information. I posted in the chat just the way you kind of visually and interactively, iteratively as well in the process, kind of like formulate what could be a complex process, and like it distilled it down into some really what seems like to me good design decisions, just of everything, of like spacing, color, text, help, copy. So yeah, really, really well done. And I love the human in the loop of the summarization. Like it's not just like oh, suddenly something automatically digitally happens and now the votes have accumulated to a passing. It's like, no, like there's still the governance in the human decision making, that, you know, and it's also a bit of a ceremony as well. It's like, great, okay, I get a chance to actually participate in the result of this in some way and announce it. Yeah, I wonder where that came from. In general, I'm curious about the design process. If you were seeing proposals being made informally via posts on Hylo already. I presume obviously you kind of like surveyed some of the existing tools like Lumio, etc. But yeah, I'm curious if there's any time left of just if you want to elaborate a little bit on the design research that went into this. I'd just be selfishly curious. But yeah, well done. Really, really cool feature.
Thank you. You want to share a little bit?
I mean, we really, I mean, there's two ways this could have gone. Like, there are systems for like municipalities to make decisions together, like Othello, or a lot of the DAO tooling, decision-making tooling these days is geared towards like, we're going to spend money together. So it has to be very rigorous. There's various milestones during those decision-making processes. We looked at those tools, and then we looked at more informal tools like Lumio, which can still be quite sophisticated, all the way to polls in Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. And we're kind of more towards that end of the spectrum because we looked, like you're saying, we looked at how people were using emojis to make decisions on posts. And we were trying to figure out, okay, what level of stakes are the groups that are currently using Hylo? What are the stakes for those groups? What types of decisions are they making? And we realized we didn't need to go all the way to this programmatically very sophisticated, everything's cryptographically verified, and we didn't need to go in that direction because that's not actually what people need. And having built some of those tools in the past, a lot of the political process was actually happening in WhatsApp or Telegram or Facebook Messenger, where they were using the polling tools to come up with the proposal. And so we thought, okay, so that's actually where a lot of the coordination is happening, is below this final moment where you need to make this giant important decision as a board or a company or a DAO or a group. And it's easier to build that from a form factor standpoint. It fits more nicely into Hylo and can still be used to create compelling and like a rigorous process through which people come to agreement. And as far as our internal design process, after like looking through all of that, a lot of it was, how do we keep aligned with the core values that we share as a group and that we're inviting people into when they join Hylo, like pro-social values? How do we make sure that whatever we're putting into code maps to that? And I think we ended up in a pretty good spot in terms of balancing all of those tensions and considerations. But ultimately, we're really just excited to see people use it and to see if we were right.
Yeah, and just one thing I want to add real quick, and then I want to hear from Hannah as well. Especially when it comes to the conclusion of a proposal where the person who authored it can go in and set the outcome, we originally were thinking like, oh, we can do this programmatically. You know, if it's pass fail, it passes or it fails. That's it. And then the more we thought about it, the more we realized like, no, decision making is a very human relational process. And there's very few circumstances where you can just programmatically express a decision. Like, yeah, maybe with a poll. But what happens in real life with a group of people that actually like are in relationship is that it's a conversation. Like a lot of the ways we make decisions internally as a team is like, it's a circle and we do a round and we talk about it. And whatever the original proposal is gets shaped by everyone's input. And eventually there's a decision made that is better than what anyone could have come up with on their own. And so we wanted to make sure there was space for that process to be reflected in a digital tool. So it'll be an experiment and we'll see how it gets used. If, you know, will the post authors come back to write the conclusion? We will see, because it does require someone to like come back and finish the thing. Maybe there needs to be like a reminder.
Yeah.
A reminder, a notification. That would be great.
Add it to the Miro.
Putting it on the Miro. Yes, yes.
I'll add, were you done, Claire?
Yeah.
Just one more little piece is that we leaned toward flexibility, and because we don't know how people are going to want to use it. And you know, basically like building on what Claire said, like we could have had all these different structures or types of like you choose, you know, 50% of people have to vote to for this to pass, or you know, like what's the voting method could have been much more sophisticated, and we could have like offered structure around that, and then that would programmatically decide the result. But again, it's like we feel like there's so many more ways that people make decisions than we could encapsulate in a few different structures. And it becomes much more complex in a way to then have to like think about and decide the structure ahead of time than to have it be that more flexible, dynamic human process. I do think there may be ways that we like maybe set up templates for the proposal description that encourage people to say like how the decision will ultimately be made within the actual just description of the proposal. Lumio does that nicely. They have kind of like description templates that help you define what goes into a good proposal. And then also there's definitely another level of sophistication that could happen around roles and responsibilities for like who gets to create proposals, who gets to vote on proposals, you know, different levels of membranes. And all of that is like next version. We want to start with as simple as possible, promote kind of decentralized, you know, everyone can create a proposal, everyone can vote on proposals as the first structure that we support and promote. And then over time, we might add these more sophisticated systems that different groups may want to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Hannah, if you are listening in and if you'd like to share anything, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, everybody. I work with Claire and Tibet and Ned and Anna for Egg Data Wallet as part of the OpenTEAM project. And I saw this post in Hylo and got very interested in this community-oriented process, and also curious about this new feature. So I like to congratulate Hylo team with this awesome new feature, first of all. And I am excited to see it. It is like, it seems a very easy to use tool and flexible. And thanks for sharing the process you went through behind the design decisions and the logics. I think that's fantastic. Generally, I'm totally impressed about the thoughts, and then open to explore, experiment with this new tool and see how users are really using it in order to provide more sophisticated functions. I think that's a great approach.
Mm-hmm.
So, nice to meet you, Aaron, Chris,
Nice to meet you.
and Tom.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Cool. Well, this is great. Thank you everyone so much for input so far. And we definitely have a few more specific questions we'd like to put into this space. We're doing great on time. Well, something that I would love to hear about is how do you see OpenTEAM potentially using something like this? Or for folks that want to comment on other groups they're a part of, that's cool as well.
I'm happy to share. I think a lot of you are familiar with the ag data use agreements that OpenTEAM has been working on in the past year. This is a set of documents that we've proposed to sort of suggest / lightly enforce good data use practices in the ag space. And we've been talking about how we will iterate on these documents and sort of come to conclusions around updates. So I could see this being a really helpful tool. We've thought about putting together like a committee that sort of goes through the documents and facilitates like getting comments from the community and then suggesting updates. And I could see this being like a really strong tool for people to accept or reject a proposed update to language in a document. And I think there's like a lot of other places that we're looking to sort of co-design documents and then later on iterate or just like reaffirm sort of like commitment to documents. So yeah, that's something I'm thinking about, like document iteration. And even if something's like not necessarily iterated on, just kind of like coming back around to the group and being like, okay, this is a year. This has been a year. We don't see any like need for change. Do you still sort of like agree to this document?
Love that. That would be really cool to see. Let's do it. What other thoughts, Nat?
Yeah, I also see like for maybe earlier stages in projects than what Anna's describing, like as we bring like co-conveners together to say like plan a collabathon, like as they're determining the best way to engage the community or the best facilitation method, like should it be an in-person event? Should it be a longer term series of community sessions? Like how might we want to go about that? If co-conveners or sort of like leads on a project wanted to get more community quick input, I feel like this could be a good way to do that if we had, I mean, I will know OpenTEAM needs to have a more active Hylo community for that to be really useful, but I do think that like I could see some sort of quick ways for community informed decision making around like how we run collaboration through this type of voting. I also think eventually we want to be able to use governance tooling like this to be able to determine like what projects we're prioritizing with like finite amounts of funding that we have and to have community sort of informing decisions on that as well. Again, I would really want our community to be more active on Hylo before doing something like that, because if it's informing how we allocate funds, we want to make sure we get a good amount of participation. But it also could be a way to get people more actively participating because they see, okay, like there are a number of types of decisions that are happening in this space, and some of them can be like really impactful. And some of them can be around, to Anna's point, like sort of community reaffirmation at later stages of projects, or it could be around helping in a community-driven way sort of shape the direction of some projects, or the allocation of funds towards the end of a co-design stage as well. So I see a lot of potential for this. This is why we're so excited about the sort of broad set of governance tools that you all are building out. But especially this, I feel is like could really help us make sure that what we're doing is ultimately very community informed.
Yeah, love that.
People will show up if the stakes are high. And even, I guess when we ran the Edge Prize, was that a year and a half ago? Hylo was in a much different space from a UX and UI standpoint. It wasn't as easy to use now, and we're going to keep making big leaps this year. And there was the Edge Prize was a bi-regional prize, basically challenge, where people submitted their ideas and the community voted on each other's ideas, who should receive the prizes. And that sort of situation really did, like, people overcame lots of hurdles. People who weren't normally technically inclined were actively participating. So I want to affirm that you can try those things and see what the reaction is. But my sense is that people will show up to make those decisions together.
Yeah. Chris or Hannah, any thoughts about in community spaces you're a part of, how you could see this being used? Optional. Cool. Tibet and Tom, what feels like high priority to discuss? We have 10 more minutes.
I would love to see if there's any opinions on the templates, and maybe that's something that had to be pondered over time and like looked at. But both the templates that we have currently there, what if there's like the ordering of them, if there's anything that makes sense there, and then also if there's templates missing or if you feel like there's too many. Yeah, any opinions on that?
Yeah, I can share my screen. Over here. So I'm zoomed in on what those options are.
Of course, that doesn't show what the actual proposal options that come out of those are, but
yeah, we could go into the demo space, and Tom, you could show some of the other ones we didn't show. Okay, yeah.
Another note is that currently some of these templates actually, I believe, Tom, still change the quorum.
Yeah, they do.
And maybe even some of the other options. So that's another piece to consider.
So just to jump back in. Yeah, so each of them, I mean, very arbitrarily, I've kind of like set a quorum for them. We could just exclude that, for example. But to run down really quickly, so yes, no, I won't click on it. It's very simple. We've already seen it. It's two options, yes and no. Poll, again, very simple, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So obviously you'd want to change what option 1 says here, but that's the long and the short of it. It's a single vote. Advice. So this is from the advice process from reinventing organizations, and it's just I love the practice, and I would always take an opportunity to encourage it for people to just be like, hey, I'm in charge of this thing, but I want to get advice. And the two options here are agree, yep, this sounds like a good option that we're pursuing, or concern, which gives you space to go deeper into the discussion. Following on from that, consent. So kind of like very straightforward. I consent or I object. This is not programmatically enforced. So if there is an objection, there is nothing the platform will say, oh, this poll has been, this has been rejected, So again, that's up to the proper in-human interaction governance that comes from when the votes are tallied. Okay, someone's objected, we need to actually dive into that. And again, here I put quorum 100%, which is kind of in some ways outrageous, but that's certainly something that each of these options, maybe it actually just makes sense to not have a default for any one of these. Consensus, again, it's really just like permutations on the ability for people to say yes or no. And so again, similarly here, if someone says block, there is no programmatic thing the platform will do to say this proposal is blocked. But it should be a pretty strong cue for the group to engage in like, oh, okay, like actually there's a real problem here and we can't go ahead with this proposal as it stands. Scheduling. Again, yeah, I think I mentioned in the chat, it'd be amazing if we could, I'm blanking on the app that I always use for scheduling my youth group. But you're having a calendar view and being able to pick out time slots, that would be incredible, well beyond the scope of our current iteration. So maybe this is just like you say, Wednesday, and that's what you got. So it's very bare bones from a scheduling perspective. Main difference being it's a multiple choice. And multiple choice, we've seen that one, and gradient of agreement, we've seen that one as well. And again, this is just, again, a very nice long spread for polling, or if you just want to get a sort of general feel for how people, think about something, if you say pineapple on pizza, whoa, you're going to get a spread there. So that's basically the options as they stand right now. So I'll remove these just so that we can let sort of sit there and yeah, so there's multiple options, maybe too many. And I've explained a few facets there, like maybe someone will think if I hit consent or consensus that a blocking vote will change something in the interface. But that is not the case. So yeah, that's the current state of play.
Yeah. Tom, can you show us the decision log?
The decision, sorry, the decision.
History of decisions, the governance tab.
Oh, yes. Okay, sure. So I mean, governance. So at the moment, it is just it's just a view of all the proposals, whether they're opened or closed. There is what would be a better design is if there were more options up here to specify only show me the opened or only the closed or several segments. I have not implemented those yet because it would be a significant derivation from the current feed component. But that is something that would make sense for a future, the full proposals thing. So, yeah, it's just in the governance. And ultimately, I think we also want to have related features around community moderation or moderation decisions in general to also be viewable in this context. Yeah, I think we'll probably, given that there's that new feature is also in play, that I think this will be something that we'll end up reworking because it doesn't fit what we want it to do doesn't quite fit the default feed component. So I think we might want to do a detailed custom view of this.
Yeah.
The end.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Cool. Any last comments? Well, before we wrap up.
I think I'm just thinking back to Tibet's question around like the template options and order. And well, two things. So one, gradient of agreement to me is not the most intuitive term. I don't know what would be a more intuitive term, but
Agree, disagree.
yeah, agree, disagree, or something there that yeah, just makes that a little more intuitive. And I anticipate that might be a more highly used template than, say, the scheduling one, given the current functionality of that. And so maybe moving that up. I also think that the current scheduling one, if it is just selecting an emoji and writing in what is like a text option 4 times, that is kind of the same as multiple choice. And so I wonder if if it would make sense just to have that same flexibility of adding emojis and adding text options in multiple choice and leaving it at that. And then when you do eventually get towards more of a calendar display, then having more of a scheduling option.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if others, yeah, these are all personal opinions.
Strong agree. Double green check marks. Yeah, I think paring it down a little bit would be really good.
Yeah, I think that's will simplify because initially when I look at like about 5, 6 choices, I wasn't sure immediately what that means, like gradient of agreement or multiple choices.
Mhm.
And so that's one thing, like maybe further think about where we see the similarity and then reduce the options. And second, there's a block. So Nat mentioned the color-coded difference between disagree and block. So for block, I wasn't sure like in that choices options, what that really mean. Like, am I blocking this poll because I really disagree? So then maybe like a stop sign shape will be more intuitive for people to grok. So some visual suggestion.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe one of the things that happens when choosing a template is some of them will add a little prefix as such that is completely editable to the title, and just having poll, if it's consensus option, then maybe consensus gives you a bit more of that. Gives you more of an indication of what's actually going on.
Cool. Well, I'm seeing that we are at our time. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for really, really good feedback. We have a lot of good ideas on the Miro. So our team will be integrating this and thinking about what changes we can do right now to improve the feature. And then we'll be doing a little more testing, and then we'll be launching it and putting it out there, and we can all start testing it out. Very, very exciting. And yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot once it gets out into the wild and people start using it. So of course, we'll continue to learn and iterate going forward.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for your partnership in this process. It's just like so cool to see it come to life.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all. Have a good weekend.
Thanks so much. Yes, you as
Blessings.
well. Bye.